and welcome to India Global. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. Let's take a look at headlines this Thursday evening.
As far as the allegations are concerned, PM Trudeau's own admission yesterday would indicate the value. As regards our stance on the allegations, we will naturally reject false imputations against our diplomats.
India's External Affairs Ministry rubbishes Canadian Prime Minister's allegation, underlines the pattern is motivated by political considerations of Justin Trudeau. MEA Spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal underscores several forces promoting anti-India activities that are being promoted in Canada. Ottawa has failed to take action despite repeated reminders. Fresh development in Dhaka. Bangladesh's International Crimes Tribunal issues arrest warrant against former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and 45 others for alleged crimes against humanity during the student movement. All right, on to the first story that we are taking on India Global today, how India has very categorically said that its stand is vindicated. Canadian Prime Minister has said that he had no proof, his government had no proof, something that India has been saying all along. And that's exactly what External Affairs Ministry spokesperson also said today in the briefing, where they said that this is exactly what New Delhi has been seeking. Give us proof so that we can act. It also says that the onus of the train wreck that the India-Canada relationship has now become is solely on Justin Trudeau. We come back. Let's first listen in to the External Affairs Ministry spokesperson. We come back and talk more on the impact the standoff is having on people, students, immigrants, all that. But first up, listen in to a formal reaction coming in from the External Affairs Ministry.
We chose to continue to work behind the scenes to try and get India to cooperate with us. And at that point, it was primarily intelligence, not hard evidentiary proof.
As far as the allegations are concerned, PM Trudeau's own admission yesterday would indicate the value. As regards our stance on the allegations, we will naturally reject false imputations against our diplomats. There's a clear pattern to smear India for reasons best known to them.
All right, let's discuss this in detail. I've got a panel of experts to talk about what this means in terms of the bilateral relationship and also the people-to-people impact. The students, tourists, a large number of Indians are in Canada right now, 17-18 lakh of them. What happens to them in the backdrop of such uncertainty? We have Brahma Chilani, strategic affairs expert, joining me from Delhi, and we also have Terry Meluski, who's a former senior correspondent of CBC, joining me live from Toronto. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking out the time speaking to me on India Global. Terry, let me start with you. As things stand right now, New Delhi is very clear. Their stand has been vindicated. They've been saying all along there's no proof, and that's exactly what Justin Trudeau said as well.
Actually, he said that at the time there was only intelligence. That's number one. Number two, I'm not overwhelmed by not excited by the alleged difference between intelligence and evidence. If you've got good intelligence and you've got a picture of it and it's real, well, that's evidence. So I'm not impressed by that objection. There is a second problem on the Indian side. There's a problem, yes, on the Canadian side that they have failed to make public. And of course, there are difficulties in Canadian law. The judge could throw the case out if he finds that politicians and prosecutors have been trying the accused in public, laying out evidence in public. That's putting a thumb on the scales of justice, influencing the trial. It's not kosher in law. So there are some limitations. But there are some problems on the Indian side. And I will mention one, just to be brief. That is that simultaneously, as it calls the Canadian allegations absurd, baseless, false, and reckless, at the same time, much the same allegations have been made by the Biden administration in the United States, which has leveled a very detailed and very persuasive indictment, chock full of hard evidence, against an Indian national, Nikhil Gupta, who's now awaiting trial. He's in prison in the United States, in New York. and he's facing trial on the charge that he, in cahoots with a Indian government official, plotted a murder plot to take out A, Gurpatwant Singh Pannu of Sikhs for Justice, and B, Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Canada. So it was one plot with at least two and several more targets. So how is one absurd, according to the Indians, and the other, which is the same plot, that they take very seriously? Now they have a high-level commission investigating it. Well, pick a lane. Either it's absurd or you're taking it seriously. You can't have both.
Okay. I want to fix that audio with Terry, and if we could just look at that because it's just a little erratic. But Mr. Chilani, respond to what Terry is saying, and in fact what many have been saying, though of course New Delhi has been very clear about the distinction between America and the Canadian probes, the fact that one has been completely professional about it, the fact that even when there are elections 3 weeks later, they've been absolutely professional with no political mudslinging happening. And that is exactly what's happening as far as Canada is concerned. But explain to us as far as what Terry is saying and how New Delhi should be responding to that.
First, Trudeau, by his own admission before the federal inquiry, has stated that in September 2023, when he triggered the downward spiral in bilateral relations with India by alleging an Indian government hand in the killing of a Sikh militant, at that stage, he did not have credible evidence against India. Now, that's an extraordinary admission for a person, for the leader of a government, to have triggered this downward spiral in relations without having credible evidence. He was relying on raw intelligence, which was supplied to Canada by the Biden administration. As far as the American alleged plot is concerned, the Americans have shared with India technical, quote unquote, evidence like WhatsApp messages, which India is investigating. India is obligated to investigate if some country were to share some kind of evidence. The problem with Canada is that Canada till date has not shared any evidence with India. The Indian Ministry of External Affairs has been saying daily, it said it yesterday, it repeated today, that not an iota of evidence has been shared with India. Now, unless Canada shares that evidence with India, how can India set up any kind of inquiry? So that's the most important thing to bear in mind. But I think there's a larger issue here, that this kind of diplomatic spat between two major democracies is unprecedented. Never before have two major democracies squabbled over an issue that should have been discussed through diplomatic channels, resolved through diplomatic channels. Now, what has happened is that Trudeau, through his actions, he has not only crossed an Indian red line, he has virtually created a situation where normal diplomatic relations are not possible. Each country has expelled its senior diplomats, leaving only the middle and junior diplomats left in each mission.
Then let me then ask you this in terms of what happens to the people. That's an issue that I want to address, and let's get in those graphics as well for our viewers to see in terms of the kind of impact this will have, whether it is in terms of trade, whether it's in terms of students. There you can see about 1.3 million students are in Canada in the last 9 odd years. About 320,000 Indians out of 800,000 international students. So they are a fair bit of number, and in fact 30.9 billion has been added to Canada's GDP just by Indian students alone. So that is the impact on one aspect. Then there is tourism. We're going to keep playing those, but that's something I want to ask Brahma Chilani to you and then get in Terry as well, that India from a people-to-people connect has a very high exposure to Canada, whether it is in terms of students, those seeking PR or those wanting to go and meet their family and relatives. What about the uncertainty and how it's impacting these people, these segments?
Two things have to be kept in mind. That first, Canada enjoys a trade surplus with India, and Canada's universities depend on Indian students for sustenance. That the Indian students are the cash cow of Canadian universities. So Canada needs India, but India also needs Canada. And the challenge for both Ottawa and New Delhi is how to salvage this relationship by addressing the core concerns. The core concerns are about the fact that Canada has become the global hub of the Khalistan militant movement. It's history is repeating itself. What happened in the first half of the 1980s, which led to twin Air India bombings of 1985, in which 331 people were killed by Sikh terrorist bombers, according to two separate Canadian inquiries. That same scenario is now unfolding, not in terms of the bombings, but the threat of something similar happening, because Canada has now become the international epicenter of the Khalistan terrorist movement.
Okay.
These people are using Canadian soil to openly threaten India. They are glorifying the assassination of Indira Gandhi, and now they're threatening to kill the incumbent Prime Minister of India, Modi. So this is happening from Canadian soil. This is unacceptable.
Yes.
And therefore, it's incumbent on both countries to find a way out.
To resolve some of these issues. Absolutely. Mr. Chilani, let me get Terry's response to that. His audio has been fixed. Terry, respond to what we have been also talking about in terms of the people-to-people connect and the impact that citizens will have of a diplomatic standoff that to a large extent is Justin Trudeau's making.
I think the large number of citizens who depend, of both countries who depend on this relationship flourishing will have to begin putting pressure on both governments to settle this in a civilized way. I would like to add that on the point just made, that I'm completely sympathetic to Indian anger and disgust over the 40 years of complacency and toleration of Khalistani threats and actual violence over the years. It's been absolutely appalling the way that Canadian politicians, not just the Liberals, by the way, but all parties, have bent the knee, have shown up at Vaisakhi Day parades, celebrating the Air India bomber as a great hero. And the politicians go and smile and wave and hustle for votes. Oh, what posters of Indira Pama? What posters of the Masbat? Oh, I didn't see those. I'm so surprised to hear they were there. They pretend that they don't know what they're doing. Well, they are pandering to a terrorist movement. And by the way, it's a very small minority of seats in Canada that support that movement. So Canada is definitely to blame for the growth in Indian anger, maybe even causing India to, well, if you won't do anything about it, you will. However, India has miscalculated that this is a free speech country in Canada, and we're not going to just ban everybody who says Khalistan Zindabad. That's not against the law in Canada, and it's not going to be. India should forget the idea. They just say, well, Parpam Singh Panoon is a designated terrorist. We say he's a terrorist. Therefore, you should treat him as a terrorist.
Okay.
What's the evidence? And so there's a problem there, but it's not insoluble, my point. I think that the students and the other citizens that you mentioned already, these people could and should say to their government of all parties,
Okay.
look, you've got to settle this. We need a civilized relationship between two important democracies.
Absolutely. We need a civilized relationship between two democracies. But at the end of the day, as I said, there are two sides to this. One is the diplomatic standoff, where India says its stand has been completely vindicated. And then there is the other side about the human impact of this, that at the end of the day, we may be running several universities. We may be ensuring that Canada runs a trade surplus against us. But what happens to those who are in queue for the opportunities that they had lined up for, whether it's students, tourists, or family, or those seeking PR permits and so on and so forth? That's a story we're going to come back and revisit. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking out the time and speaking to me on India Global. On that note, we slip into a very short break. We come back and talk more about, well, what's the latest as far as Bangladesh is concerned? The army chief is headed to America and Canada. Why the army chief and not the civilian government? Is Bangladesh heading towards, well, greater role of the army, possibly a military state? We come back and talk more. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is India Global. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. Let's take a look at the other big story that we are discussing today, which is Bangladesh. The army chief is headed to US and Canada. In fact, it's an 11-day official visit for the Bangladesh army chief. He's set to meet high-level military officials, a bunch of UN peacekeeping mission as well. He's also looking to increase the army capacity of Bangladesh. But why is this visit by an army chief and not by a civilian government? And that's exactly what we are asking on India Global. Let's get in some of those big questions on the screen for the viewers to know that the reason why we are debating this is why is it that and does this mean that there could be a larger US role in Bangladesh? Something that's been said multiple times. Do such visits provide greater credibility and credence to those questions? That's question number one. Second question, why is an army chief going instead of an interim government? It should be the Mohammad Yunus government instead of the army chief going. He's not a representative of Bangladesh government. It is Mohammad Yunus and his representatives who should be representing Dhaka. And then the third and final question that we are asking is that is it now clear that as Bangladesh has not identified and formalized its march to democracy and the democratic framework and elections, are these instances indicating that maybe it's descending towards a military regime and not towards a democracy? That's the question that we are asking our panelists. Joining me on the show is Muqtadir Rashid, who is a senior journalist, joining me from Dhaka, and then there's Sanjay Bhardwaj, who's a Center for South Asian Studies from JNU. In fact, Mr. Bhardwaj, let me start with you by asking that as things stand right now, these are some very serious questions as far as what is the army chief doing, meeting American representatives and Canadian representatives, where it should be the civilian government really spearheading all such initiatives.
I can understand by three different views, three different aspects are there. One, of course, there are military exchange or military upgradation or defense issues are there. The UN, the Bangladesh had been largest contribution in UN peacekeeping missions, so they are talking, and it is reported as that these things would be discussed there. So this could be one reason. Second, of course, the political reasons, the way Bangladesh had changed its guard in Bangladesh, where the former prime minister was ousted on 5th August, and it is quite reported in different newspaper, and I also one can guess that the Americans were actively involved in Bangladesh. They were not happy with the Hasina and Awami League, and it is also quite visible and clear of the way they have appointed Mohammad Yunus, because Mohammad Yunus is in good book of America, and Hillary Clinton, he's close friend of Hillary Clinton and all. He's a liberal Democrat and he has been appointed. But third, very significant region, while Sheikh Hasina is ousted from power, is a strategic region. The Americans, they want a strategic depth in Bay of Bengal, and they were looking, I can say from 1998, while they have proposed SOFA, the Status of Forces Agreement, and then Sheikh Hasina was that time also Prime Minister. She denied to go for the SOFA, and the softer form of HANA was signed. Right. Again, this was raised by Sheikh Hasina that some white man or some country wants a base.
So there were allegations in the past as well about America's interference and possible role in the student revolution that happened. And in fact, Muqtadir Rashid, such visits, 11-day long visits, give a lot of credence to all such allegations that have been raised multiple times that possibly America had a role to play in the regime change that took place in Bangladesh 2 months back.
Thank you. This is the question. I would say you need to give up the few facts, which is very crucial. Foreign advisor already meet, the foreign advisor or foreign secretary there last month. Now our foreign secretary also visiting USA on behalf of the Bangladesh government, and now. Army Chief General Wakaruzaman visiting mostly related to the UN mission, because the UN, Bangladesh is one of the top troop sender in UN peacekeeping mission. So he has a meeting with lots of meeting with the UN official and as well as some US
my question is very simple. He can meet as many people as he wants, but what I'm saying is he is not a representative of the Bangladeshi government. Yunus is.
He is not. No. He is not representing Bangladesh government. He is representing
Who is he representing?
Bangladesh Army. He is representing Bangladesh Army because he is attending Bangladesh Army US program which is related to Bangladesh Army. And he is also representing Bangladesh Army to the UN because Bangladesh is one of the biggest troop center in UN. And you know that UN has a role in Bangladesh as well. They have their own training academy, which is standard, the UN standard, and we have to deal with that. But at the same time, we have to keep in mind that he's not representing Bangladesh government. He's representing Bangladesh Army to UN, USA, and UN and Canada. There is some military exchange in Canada. So of course, the Bangladesh Army needs to expand their global reach.
So then clearly Bangladesh Army is fortifying its capacity, capability, strength and ability to run Bangladesh at a time when there's absolutely no visibility on when the next set of elections will take place in Bangladesh. Very quickly, Mr. Rashid, respond to that, then I get in Mr. Bharadwaj.
It's a global cooperation because Bangladesh wants to go global, and the global standard should be upheld. So Bangladesh has commitment to global leaders, and so
what global standards are we talking about here? You're talking about a military chief going to America and Canada for 11 days representing his government when there are bigger security challenges at home. There are bigger security challenges in Bangladesh. Let's give Mr. Bharadwaj a chance to very quickly respond. Very quickly.
There is no such.
I would say one point here. See, Bangladesh Army for last at least I can say more than 2 decades had been very responsible in guarding the political system or contributing internationally. But I can see that the way Wakaruzaman has been giving political statement about the stability of the government, about the elections. So he has some political involvement, and his visit to United States is indicating that somehow the United States and the army, they are managing this current army government.
I'll tell you what, there's more than meets the eye, and that's exactly what we are discussing. I wish the Bangladesh Army chief had spent more time in finalizing the schedule of elections in Bangladesh, where there's absolutely no word on. There's no clarity. And thank you so much, gentlemen, for speaking to me on India Global. There's just one thing, viewers, that I want to say as we wrap this up. It was the army chief who announced that Sheikh Hasina fled Bangladesh. Not Sheikh Hasina herself, no one else from the civilian side. And now it is the Bangladesh army chief who's headed to US on an 11-day long trip when there are bigger security challenges at home. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Global. Thanks so much for watching.